The Nexus Academy floated in the void between three star systems, a massive structure of gleaming metal and energy shields that housed the brightest young minds from across the galaxy. Representatives from 47 different species walked its corridors, studied in its classrooms, and competed in its training facilities. Among them, looking small and fragile compared to the towering Krathan warriors or the multi-limbed Zephyrian scholars, was a single human child. Zara Chen sat alone in the Academy's main cafeteria, picking at her meal while conversations in dozens of alien languages buzzed around her. At 12 years old, she was the youngest student ever admitted to Nexus Academy, and certainly the most isolated. Her dark hair fell across her face as she tried to make herself invisible, but invisibility was impossible when you were the only member of your species in a facility designed for beings twice your size. "Look at the little pink thing," hissed Vextar, a young reptilian whose scales shimmered with aggressive colors. His three companions laughed, their translator devices turning the sound into something resembling human mockery. "Does it even know how to use the learning interfaces with those tiny digits?" Zara's grip tightened on her eating utensil, but she said nothing. She had learned in her first week that responding only made things worse. The Academy staff preached tolerance and cooperation between species, but they couldn't monitor every interaction between students. "I heard humans aren't even FTL capable on their own," added Krelock, a crystalline being whose body chimed softly when she moved. "They have to borrow technology from the Galactic Council just to leave their little system. Why is one even here?" The question stung because Zara had wondered the same thing herself. When the invitation to Nexus Academy had arrived on Earth, transmitted through official Galactic Council channels, her parents had been as shocked as anyone. Zara was brilliant for a human child, but the Academy only accepted students who showed exceptional promise across multiple fields of study. The competition was so fierce that some species sent their candidates through years of preparation just for the entrance examinations. "Maybe it's some kind of charity case," suggested Blorith, a massive creature whose bulk made the reinforced chair creak beneath him. The council probably felt sorry for the primitives and decided to give them a token representative. Zara stood abruptly, her tray clattering against the table. The alien students looked up with interest, finally getting the reaction they had been seeking. She could feel dozens of eyes from other tables turning to watch the confrontation. "I earned my place here," she said quietly, her voice barely audible over the cafeteria's ambient noise. Vextar's scales shifted to a more vivid pattern of orange and red. "Earned? What could a human possibly accomplish to earn anything? Your species has existed for what, a few 100,000 years? Some of us have civilizations older than your entire evolutionary history." "My test scores speak for themselves," Zara replied, though her voice wavered slightly. "Test scores." Krelock's crystalline structure pulsed with what Zara had learned was their equivalent of laughter. "Paper exercises. Theory. When was the last time a human contributed anything meaningful to galactic civilization? Your species is so young and weak that you don't even have proper names in the historical records." That wasn't entirely true, but Zara couldn't explain why, without revealing information she had been specifically told to keep private. Her admission to Nexus Academy hadn't been random, and it certainly hadn't been charity. But the circumstances surrounding her acceptance were complicated, tied to agreements and protocols that she didn't fully understand herself. "At least my species doesn't need cybernetic implants to match my intelligence," she shot back, immediately regretting the words. The cafeteria fell silent. Vextar rose to his full height, easily 3 times Zara's size, his scales now blazing with aggressive warning colors. Several other alien students began moving closer, sensing the possibility of actual conflict. "Careful, little primitive," Vextar growled. "You might want to remember that you're very far from home, surrounded by beings who could crush you without even noticing." Zara's heart hammered in her chest, but she held her ground. She had been trained not to show fear, though that training felt inadequate when facing a creature that could probably tear her apart with minimal effort. "Is there a problem here?" The voice belonged to Instructor Meldrax, a tall, ethereal being whose species served as mediators throughout the galaxy. Her arrival caused the gathered students to quickly disperse, though Vextar remained standing, his scales still displaying threatening patterns. "No problem, Instructor," Vextar said smoothly. "We were simply having a cultural exchange with our human classmate." Meldrax's large dark eyes moved between Zara and the alien students. Her species was known for their ability to sense emotional undercurrents, and Zara suspected she knew exactly what had been happening. Cultural exchanges are encouraged, the instructor said carefully, but they should promote understanding, not division. Perhaps you would all benefit from reviewing the Academy's code of conduct regarding interspecies interactions. The alien students mumbled acknowledgments and began to drift away. But Vextar paused next to Zara's table. "This isn't over, human," he whispered, too quietly for the instructor to hear. "Sooner or later you'll have to prove you belong here, and when that time comes, all the protection in the galaxy won't help you." After he left, Instructor Meldrax approached Zara's table. "Are you all right, Miss Chen?" Zara nodded, though her hands were still shaking slightly. "I'm fine. It's nothing I can't handle." The instructor studied her for a long moment. The transition to academy life can be challenging for any student, but it can be particularly difficult when you're the only representative of your species. "If you need someone to talk to, my office is always open." "Thank you," Zara said, though she doubted she would take the instructor up on the offer. The last thing she wanted was to be seen as weak or unable to handle the pressures of academy life. As the instructor walked away, Zara gathered her things and headed toward the dormitory levels. The corridors were designed to accommodate beings of vastly different sizes and environmental needs, with adjustable gravity fields and atmospheric controls. For someone her size, navigating them felt like moving through a world built for giants. In her small private quarters, Zara sat at her study terminal and stared at the communication device her parents had given her before she left Earth. She could contact them at any time, but the delay between star systems meant conversations were difficult. More importantly, she didn't want them to know how isolated she felt. The Academy was supposed to be an honor, a chance for humanity to prove itself worthy of greater participation in galactic affairs. But sitting alone in her room, Zara wondered if she was strong enough to carry that burden. The next morning brought Zara's least favorite class, combat theory and application. Unlike the academic subjects where she could excel through pure intelligence, this course required physical demonstrations that put her at a severe disadvantage against her larger, stronger classmates. The training facility was a vast chamber with adjustable gravity and environmental controls, allowing students from different worlds to compete on relatively equal terms. Today, Instructor Kriltan, a battle-scarred veteran from the warrior caste of Vorthan Prime, had announced sparring matches to test their understanding of tactical principles. "Combat is not merely about strength or speed," the instructor bellowed, his forearms gesturing emphatically. "It is about understanding your opponent, exploiting weaknesses, and adapting to changing circumstances. Today you will demonstrate these principles in paired combat scenarios." Zara's stomach sank as she watched the instructor begin assigning partners. Most of the matchups were between students of similar size and capability, but when Kriltan's eyes fell on her, she saw the glint of what might have been sadistic amusement. "Chen, you will face Vextar," the instructor announced, "an interesting challenge of adaptation versus raw power." Vextar's scales immediately brightened with anticipation. Around the training floor, other students began to gather, sensing the potential for entertainment. The reptilian was not only larger and stronger than Zara, but his species was naturally aggressive and had been bred for warfare. "This should be amusing," Vextar said, as they moved to the designated combat circle. "Try not to break too easily, little human. I want this to last long enough to be interesting." Zara activated her personal shield generator, a standard piece of Academy equipment that would prevent serious injury, while still allowing the impact of attacks to be felt. The rules were simple. The match continued until one participant was unable to continue or yielded. "Begin," Instructor Kriltan commanded. Vextar moved with surprising speed for his size, his clawed hands striking toward Zara's midsection. She rolled backward, barely avoiding the attack, and tried to circle around to his flank. But the reptilian was experienced in combat, and he easily turned to face her renewed approach. "Running already?" Vextar taunted. "How very human." The comment stung, but Zara forced herself to focus. She had trained in martial arts on Earth, but those techniques had been designed for human opponents. Fighting a creature twice her size with natural weapons required a completely different approach. She feinted left, then dove right, trying to get behind Vextar's guard. Her small size allowed her to move quickly in ways that might surprise him. But the reptilian's reach advantage meant he could strike her even when she thought she was safe. A backhanded blow caught her shoulder, sending her spinning across the combat circle. The shields absorbed most of the impact, but the force still left her gasping. Laughter erupted from the watching students. "Is this really the best humanity has to offer?" called out Blorith from the crowd. "My younger siblings could put up a better fight." Zara struggled to her feet, her shoulder aching despite the protective fields. Vextar advanced slowly, clearly enjoying the moment. "You know what I think?" the reptilian said conversationally as he stalked her around the circle. "I think your species made some kind of deal to get you here. Maybe promised the council some resources or territory or information, because there's no way you earned this spot on merit." The accusation hit closer to home than Zara wanted to admit. She knew there were aspects of her admission that hadn't been explained to her. Agreements between Earth's government and the Galactic Council that remained classified. "Nothing to say?" Vextar continued. "Maybe when you go crawling back to your little backwater planet, you can tell them that humans aren't ready to play with the real civilizations." Something inside Zara snapped. The months of isolation, the constant reminders of humanity's perceived inferiority, the weight of representing her entire species. It all crystallized into a cold, focused anger. When Vextar lunged again, Zara didn't try to dodge. Instead, she stepped directly into his attack, letting his momentum carry him forward while she dropped low and swept his legs. The reptilian, expecting her to retreat as before, was caught completely off guard and crashed heavily to the training floor. The watching students fell silent, shocked to see the human child actually score a point against the much larger opponent. But Zara wasn't finished. As Vextar tried to rise, she moved with a speed and precision that seemed impossible for someone her size. Her training on Earth hadn't just been in human martial arts. Her instructors had included techniques adapted from military applications, methods designed for asymmetric warfare against superior opponents. She struck pressure points along Vextar's neck and spine, targeting nerve clusters that would temporarily disrupt his motor control. The reptilian found himself unable to coordinate his movements properly, his natural advantages neutralized by techniques he had never encountered. "Impossible," whispered Krelok from the crowd. "Humans aren't supposed to know advanced combat sciences." Zara stood over the fallen Vextar, her breathing controlled despite the exertion. "You're right," she said quietly, loud enough for the gathered students to hear. "My species is young. We haven't built empires that span millennia or developed technologies that reshape reality. But we've learned something that maybe your ancient civilizations have forgotten." She looked around at the watching faces, seeing surprise, confusion, and the first hints of uncertainty. "We've learned that survival doesn't depend on being the strongest or the oldest. It depends on being willing to do whatever it takes to protect what matters to you." Instructor Kriltan stepped into the circle, his expression unreadable. Match concluded. Chen is the victor. As the other students dispersed, many casting nervous glances back at Zara, Vextar slowly regained control of his motor functions. The reptilian scales had shifted to colors Zara had never seen before, patterns that seemed to indicate confusion and something that might have been respect. "Where did you learn those techniques?" he asked quietly. Zara hesitated. The truth was that her martial arts training had been far more extensive than a typical human child would receive, part of a preparation program that her parents had told her was just in case. Now she was beginning to wonder just what they had been preparing her for. "Earth has more to offer than most people realize," she said finally. After the class ended, Zara walked slowly back to her quarters, her mind racing. The victory felt good, but it had also raised questions she wasn't sure she was ready to answer. Other students were looking at her differently now, and she suspected word of the match would spread quickly through the academy. In her room, she activated her personal communication system and composed a message to her parents. But as she began to type, she found herself hesitating. There were things she wanted to ask, questions about her training and her admission to the academy that suddenly seemed much more important. Instead, she wrote a simple message. "Classes are going well. Made some progress in combat theory today. Hope you're both doing well." Before she could change her mind, she transmitted the message and sat back in her chair. Outside her viewport, the stars wheeled slowly past, distant and cold. For the first time since arriving at Nexus Academy, Zara felt like she might actually belong here. But she also had the distinct feeling that her real challenges were just beginning. Word of the sparring match spread through Nexus Academy faster than Zara had anticipated. By the time she arrived at her strategic planning class the next day, the whispered conversations that had previously been mocking had taken on a different tone entirely. Did you hear about the human? She caught fragments of discussion as she made her way to her seat. Defeated Vextar using techniques nobody recognized. Impossible for such a young species to develop. Maybe we underestimated them. Professor Yildara, a graceful being whose species was renowned for their strategic brilliance across multiple galactic conflicts, called the class to attention. Today's exercise would be a simulation of the Battle of Kepler's Edge, a famous engagement where a small defensive force had held off a vastly superior enemy through superior tactics and positioning. You will be divided into teams, the professor announced. Half will play the role of the attacking fleet, half will defend the system. Victory conditions are simple. Attackers must control the primary planet within the time limit. Defenders must prevent this outcome. Zara found herself assigned to the defending team, along with several students who had previously ignored her existence. The attacking force was led by Thanoxil, a brilliant strategist from the hegemony worlds whose species had perfected the art of overwhelming force projection. As the teams gathered around their holographic displays, Zara studied the tactical situation. The defending force was outnumbered 3-1, with older ships and limited resources. The attackers had every advantage except knowledge of the local system's quirks and characteristics. "This is hopeless," muttered Velnox, a multi-tentacled being whose species served as tactical analysts for several major military organizations. The historical defenders only succeeded because they received unexpected reinforcements. "We have no such advantage in this simulation. Maybe that's not the only way to win," Zara said quietly. The other defenders turned to look at her. Since the sparring match, she had noticed a subtle shift in how her classmates regarded her. But this was the first time any of them had seemed genuinely interested in her tactical opinions. "Explain," said Torvak, a crystalline being whose thought processes were renowned for their logical precision. Zara pointed to the holographic display, highlighting specific areas of the star system. "Everyone's focused on the main battle, but look at these asteroid fields here and here. The historical accounts mention them, but they're treated as obstacles. What if they're actually opportunities?" She began manipulating the display, showing potential ship movements and positioning. The attacking force is using standard fleet formations designed for open space engagement. But if we can force them to fight in these asteroid fields, their numerical advantage becomes meaningless. They can't bring their full firepower to bear without destroying the very resources they're trying to capture. Velnox's tentacles writhed in what Zara had learned was a sign of intense concentration. The risk is enormous. Navigating those fields requires precision that most pilots simply don't possess. Most pilots from most species, Zara agreed, but humans have something that might give us an edge. She hesitated, knowing that what she was about to reveal would raise more questions about her background. But the simulation offered a perfect opportunity to demonstrate human capabilities without directly confronting her classmates' assumptions. "My species developed spaceflight while we were still confined to a single star system," she explained. "We had to learn precision navigation through asteroid belts, comet fields, and planetary debris that would challenge even experienced galactic pilots. It's not about having better technology, it's about having better instincts." The defending team spent the next hour developing a strategy that would have seemed suicidal to most military commanders. Instead of meeting the attacking force in open space, they would retreat immediately to the asteroid fields and force a series of small, brutal engagements where maneuverability mattered more than raw firepower. When the simulation began, Thanoxil's attacking force advanced exactly as predicted, expecting the defenders to make a desperate stand at the edge of the star system. Instead, they found empty space and sensor contacts disappearing into the treacherous asteroid fields. "They're running," Thanoxil announced confidently to his team. "Pursue and destroy them before they can regroup." But as the attacking ships entered the asteroid fields, Zara's strategy began to unfold. The defenders had positioned themselves at carefully calculated points where the asteroids would provide cover, while still allowing clear firing solutions. More importantly, they had anticipated the attackers' movement patterns and prepared ambush positions accordingly. "Contact, bearing 27 Mark IV, reported one of the attacking pilots. "I'm taking fire from..." Where are they? I can't get a clear targeting solution. The defenders struck fast and withdrew faster, using their knowledge of the asteroid field's gravitational currents and hidden passages to stay one step ahead of the pursuing force. Each engagement lasted only minutes, but the accumulated damage began to mount. This is impossible, Thanoxel growled, watching his supposedly overwhelming force being picked apart by guerrilla tactics. How are they navigating those fields so precisely? From her position at the defending team's command display, Zara coordinated the complex three-dimensional chess game. Her classmates watched in amazement as she seemed to instinctively know where the enemy ships would emerge from behind cover, where the asteroid field's rotation would create new opportunities, and how to time their attacks for maximum effect. I've never seen spatial reasoning like this, whispered Torvak. She's calculating trajectories and gravitational interactions faster than our combat computers. The simulation's time limit approached, and Thanoxel's force made a desperate final push toward the primary planet. But Zara had anticipated this move as well, positioning the last of her defending ships in a carefully constructed trap that used the planet's own gravitational field as a weapon. Time, Professor Yildara announced. Defending force maintains control of the primary objective. Simulation concluded. The classroom fell silent as the implications sank in. The defending team had not just survived against overwhelming odds, they had actually inflicted casualties at a rate that would have made their victory inevitable even in a longer engagement. Remarkable, the professor said, studying the tactical display. Miss Chen, your strategy showed elements I've never seen before. The use of three-dimensional ambush tactics in gravitational fields. Where did you learn such techniques? Zara felt the weight of every gaze in the classroom. She had succeeded too well, revealed capabilities that raised uncomfortable questions about human military doctrine. Earth's military academies teach asymmetric warfare, she said carefully. When you're the smaller force, you have to think differently about how to fight. Military academies? Velnox's tentacles curled in surprise. But humans have barely achieved FTL capability. Why would they need such advanced military training? The question hung in the air, and Zara realized she had painted herself into a corner. The truth was that Earth's military development had been far more extensive than most galactic civilizations realized, driven by both internal conflicts and preparation for eventual contact with hostile alien forces. Every species prepares for the possibility of conflict, she said diplomatically. Even peaceful ones need to understand how to defend themselves. Professor Yildara was studying her with an expression that suggested the explanation wasn't entirely satisfactory. Indeed, class dismissed. Miss Chen, please remain for a moment. As the other students filed out, many casting curious glances back at Zara, she approached the professor's desk with growing apprehension. Your performance today was exceptional, Professor Yildara said without preamble. But it also raised questions that go beyond normal academic curiosity. The tactical doctrines you employed suggest a level of military sophistication that conflicts with our understanding of human civilization. Zara chose her words carefully. Perhaps the Galactic Council's understanding of humanity is incomplete. The professor's expression was unreadable. Perhaps there are aspects of your presence here that have not been fully disclosed to the Academy administration. Before Zara could respond, the professor continued. I've reviewed your admission file, Miss Chen. It contains some very interesting anomalies. Recommendations from individuals whose names don't appear in any standard databases. Test scores that were submitted through channels normally reserved for classified military applications. And most curious of all, a notation that your tuition and expenses are being paid by an organization that officially doesn't exist. Zara's heart began to race. She had always known there were secrets surrounding her admission to Nexus Academy, but she hadn't realized how easily those secrets might be uncovered by someone who knew where to look. I think, Professor Yildara said quietly, that it's time we had a conversation about who you really are, Miss Chen, and perhaps more importantly, who sent you here. The Academy's data archives were vast, containing historical records from thousands of civilizations spanning millions of years. Vextar had never spent much time there before, but his defeat at the hands of the human child had sparked a curiosity that bordered on obsession. Show me everything about human military conflicts, he commanded the archive interface, his scales still flushed with the embarrassment of his public loss. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a surprisingly extensive collection of files. For a species that had only achieved spaceflight recently, humans seemed to have documented their conflicts with remarkable thoroughness. Strange, muttered Krelock, who had joined him in his research. Her crystalline form chimed softly as she leaned closer to examine the data. Look at these casualty ratios. In most of their conflicts, the side with better technology or numbers didn't always win. Vextar scrolled through battle records, his reptilian eyes narrowing as he processed the information. This can't be right. Humans were fighting wars on multiple continents simultaneously, for decades at a time? It gets worse, Krelock said, manipulating her own display. Look at this conflict they call World War II. 60 million casualties. They were fighting with primitive chemical explosives and metal projectiles, but the scale of the warfare... She paused, her internal crystals dimming. Some of our species haven't seen conflicts this devastating in their entire recorded history. The archive revealed layer upon layer of human military innovation, tactics adapted to hostile environments, strategies for fighting against superior technology, doctrines built around the assumption that defeat meant extinction. It painted a picture of a species that had spent millennia perfecting the art of warfare, while most galactic civilizations had achieved peace through overwhelming technological superiority. Here, Vextar said, highlighting a particular section, something called Special Forces. Elite military units trained in asymmetric warfare, unconventional tactics, survival in hostile territory. He looked up at Krelock. These are exactly the techniques she used against me, but it was Blorith who made the connection that changed everything. The massive alien had been conducting his own investigation through different channels, using his family's connections in the Galactic Council's administrative bureaucracy. Unlike the others, he wasn't interested in human military history. He wanted to know how a primitive species had managed to get their child admitted to the galaxy's most prestigious academy. The admission paperwork is fascinating, he told his friends during their evening meal. Most of it is standard, but there are sections that are classified at levels I've never seen before. Classified how? Vextar asked. Military intelligence? Diplomatic protocols. And most interesting of all, there's a flag in the system that indicates special handling procedures for children of protected persons. Krelock's crystalline structure brightened with interest. Protected persons? Individuals whose identities or activities are considered sensitive enough to warrant special security measures, Blorith explained. Usually applied to high-ranking military officers, intelligence operatives, or diplomatic personnel operating in dangerous territories. The three aliens exchanged glances. The implications were becoming clearer, and none of them were comfortable with what they suggested. So the human child isn't just here on academic merit, Vextar said slowly. She's here because her father is someone important enough to warrant galactic-level security protocols. Meanwhile, in Professor Yildara's private office, a very different conversation was taking place. I've been in contact with the Academy's security office, the professor told Zara. Your file contains more sealed sections than some diplomatic treaties. Whatever the truth about your background, it's protected at the highest levels. Zara sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap. She had known this moment would come eventually, but she hadn't expected it to happen so soon. I can tell you that my father works for Earth's government, she said carefully. Beyond that, I'm not supposed to discuss specifics. Professor Yildara leaned back in her chair, studying Zara with the same intensity she would use to analyze a complex tactical problem. Your father must be quite remarkable to command such secrecy. Earth is barely a footnote in galactic politics, yet someone is ensuring that his daughter receives protection, normally reserved for the children of sector governors or fleet admirals. The conversation was interrupted by a soft chime from the professor's communication system. She frowned as she read the incoming message, her expression growing increasingly concerned. This is unusual, she murmured. I've just received a priority communication from the Academy director. It seems there's been some interest in your background from sources outside the Academy. Zara felt a chill run down her spine. What kind of interest? Intelligence services. Multiple species all making discrete inquiries about human capabilities and intentions. Someone has been asking very specific questions about military doctrine, technological capabilities, and... She paused, reading further. Strategic planning methodologies. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to form a picture that Zara found deeply unsettling. Her demonstration of advanced tactical thinking had attracted exactly the kind of attention her parents had warned her to avoid. "Professor," she said quietly, "I think I may have made a mistake." Before Professor Yildara could respond, her office door chimed with an urgent visitor request. The security override code that appeared on her display indicated official academy business of the highest priority. "Enter," she called, and the door slid open to reveal Academy Director Threxnell, a being whose species had founded the institution centuries ago. His presence in a professor's office was unprecedented. Zara had never even seen him outside of formal ceremonies. "Miss Chen," the director said without preamble, "we need to talk." The conversation that followed would later be classified at levels that even Professor Yildara's security clearance couldn't access. But the basic facts were clear enough. Zara's presence at Nexus Academy was part of a larger arrangement between Earth and the Galactic Council, one that involved preparations for humanity's full integration into galactic civilization. "Your species is more significant than most council members realize," Director Threxnell explained. "The initial contact reports were incomplete. Recent assessments have suggested that humanity represents a level of military and strategic capability that was seriously underestimated." "I don't understand," Zara said, though she was beginning to suspect she understood all too well. "Your father, Miss Chen, is not simply a government employee. He is Earth's chief military strategist and the primary architect of your species' defense planning. When the Council realized the implications of humanity's tactical doctrines, arrangements were made to ensure that Earth's interests were properly represented in galactic affairs." The director paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "You were not sent here as a student, Miss Chen. You were sent here as an ambassador, a demonstration of human capabilities and a warning to any who might underestimate your species." As the full implications of her situation became clear, Zara realized that her father's identity was about to become very important indeed. Earth's military strategist was not just any government official. He was the person responsible for preparing humanity for a galaxy that might not welcome their presence. And now, thanks to her own actions, the galaxy was beginning to take notice of exactly what humanity might be capable of. "There's something else," Director Threxnell said grimly. "The intelligence inquiries about your background have intensified in the past few hours. Several major powers are now actively investigating human military capabilities. I'm afraid your tactical demonstration has attracted more attention than anyone anticipated." Zara's throat felt dry. "What does that mean?" "It means, Miss Chen, that the secret of your father's identity may not remain secret much longer. And when the galaxy learns who sent you here, everything changes." The revelation came from an unexpected source. Instructor Meldrax had been monitoring the increased intelligence activity around Nexus Academy with growing concern. As a member of the Mediation Council, her species had access to information networks that most others could only dream of. When she began cross-referencing the inquiries about human military capabilities with historical data, she uncovered something that made her blood run cold. "Director," she said, bursting into Threxnell's office without the usual ceremonial protocols, "we have a problem, a very serious problem." Director Threxnell looked up from the classified reports he had been reviewing. "If this is about the intelligence inquiries, I'm already aware." "No," Meldrax interrupted, her ethereal form flickering with distress. "It's about the girl's father. I know who he is." The director's expression grew grave. "Explain." Meldrax activated the secure holographic display, showing a complex web of data connections and cross-references. "I've been analyzing the intelligence requests, looking for patterns in what information various species are seeking. Most of them are asking about human tactical doctrines, military organization, and strategic capabilities. Standard intelligence gathering." She paused, manipulating the display to highlight specific data points. But 3 requests were different. They weren't asking about humans in general. They were asking about specific individuals. Names, service records, operational histories. "That's impossible," Director Threxnell said. "Human military records aren't accessible through standard galactic databases." "They are if you know where to look," Meldrax replied grimly. "The Hegemony Council maintains a classified database of potential security threats to galactic stability. Individuals who might pose significant dangers if they ever gained access to advanced technology or political power. The director's expression grew increasingly concerned. And there's one human in that database. One individual whose activities have been monitored by galactic intelligence services for over a decade. Someone whose strategic thinking has been analyzed, studied, and flagged as representing a potential paradigm shift in military doctrine. Meldrax highlighted a specific entry in the database, and Director Threxnell felt his heart skip a beat as he read the name. General Marcus Chen, Earth's Supreme Military Commander and Chief Strategic Planner. Classification: Omega-level threat to established galactic power structures. The silence that followed was deafening. An Omega-level classification was reserved for individuals whose capabilities posed existential threats to galactic civilization. Beings like the legendary warlord Krextol, who had conquered 17 star systems before his defeat, or the rogue AI that had nearly triggered a galactic civil war 3 centuries ago. How is this possible? Director Threxnell whispered. Earth is a single planet with primitive technology. How can one human merit such a classification? Meldrax accessed additional files, her form flickering faster as her stress increased. According to the analysis, General Chen has revolutionized human military doctrine in ways that would make him incredibly dangerous if he ever gained access to galactic-level resources. His strategic innovations have been studied by our top military analysts, and their conclusions are disturbing. She brought up a detailed report that had been compiled by the Council's Strategic Assessment Division. Human warfare is fundamentally different from galactic norms. Most of our conflicts are settled through technological superiority or economic pressure. Humans, however, have developed doctrines based on the assumption that technological parity is impossible, and that victory must be achieved through superior tactics, strategy, and willingness to accept casualties. Director Threxnell scanned the report, his expression growing more troubled with each page. Total war, asymmetric warfare, guerrilla tactics adapted for space combat, resource denial strategies. He looked up at Meldrax. These concepts are theoretical for most species. Humans have actually implemented them on a planetary scale for centuries, she confirmed. But that's not what makes General Chen specifically dangerous. The analysts believe he's been developing something they call scalable asymmetric doctrine, military strategies that could be adapted from planetary conflicts to galactic warfare. The implications were staggering. A military commander who could take the lessons learned from human conflicts and apply them to battles between star systems would be capable of defeating opponents with vastly superior technology and resources. There's more. Meldrax continued reluctantly. The database contains speculation about why Earth was really contacted by the Galactic Council. The official story is that humanity's FTL capabilities were detected and contact was established according to standard protocols. But some analysts believe the contact was initiated because General Chen's strategic innovations were becoming too dangerous to ignore, that the Council needed to either bring humanity into the galactic community under controlled circumstances or— She didn't need to finish the sentence. The alternative to controlled integration was obvious. Director Threxnell sat heavily in his chair, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. So Miss Chen isn't just the daughter of Earth's military commander. She's the daughter of someone the galactic intelligence community considers a potential threat to the established order. And she's been demonstrating capabilities that suggest she's inherited her father's strategic brilliance, Meldrax added. The tactical display in Professor Yildara's class, the combat techniques she used against Vextar, these aren't normal human abilities. They're the result of training by someone who understands warfare at levels that most species haven't seen in millennia. A new realization struck the director, the intelligence inquiries. They're not just investigating human capabilities in general. No, Meldrax confirmed. They're trying to confirm that Zara Chen is General Marcus Chen's daughter. And if they can prove that connection, then they'll know that humanity's most dangerous military mind has been preparing his daughter for exactly this kind of situation. Director Threxnell finished. They'll realize that her presence here isn't just an educational opportunity. It's a strategic positioning for humanity's long-term interests in galactic affairs. Meanwhile, in the student dormitories, Vextar had made a discovery that would change everything. His research into human military history had led him down increasingly specific paths, focusing on commanders who had demonstrated exceptional tactical brilliance. One name kept appearing in multiple contexts, associated with strategic innovations that had revolutionized human warfare. "Found him," he told his friends triumphantly. "The human who wrote the textbook on asymmetric warfare. General Marcus Chen, Earth's supreme military commander." Krelok's crystalline form brightened with interest. "Any relation to our little human classmate?" Vextar's scales shifted to colors of excitement and apprehension. "Same last name, same strategic thinking patterns. And look at this." He highlighted a biographical detail from the military records. "General Chen has one daughter, age 12, described as showing exceptional promise in strategic thinking and tactical analysis." The three aliens stared at the display in stunned silence as the implications became clear. "We haven't been dealing with just any human child," Blorith said slowly. "We've been dealing with the daughter of the most dangerous military mind in human history. And we've been mocking her," Vexatar added, his scales now displaying patterns of genuine fear. "We've been treating her like she was inferior when she's actually the heir to a strategic legacy that could reshape galactic warfare," Krelok finished. As word began to spread through the student body, the atmosphere at Nexus Academy underwent a dramatic shift. The quiet human girl who had been dismissed as a curiosity was suddenly seen in an entirely different light. But the real change was yet to come. Because somewhere in the depths of galactic intelligence networks, automated systems were finally making the connections that would confirm everyone's worst fears. General Marcus Chen's daughter was at Nexus Academy. And if that was true, then humanity's integration into galactic civilization was proceeding according to a plan that was far more sophisticated than anyone had realized. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened at 0300 Galactic Standard Time, rousing representatives from dozens of species from their sleep cycles. In the great chamber that orbited the galaxy's political center, holographic projections flickered to life as delegates connected from across known space. "This session is classified at the highest levels," announced High Counselor Vorthak, her ancient voice carrying the weight of millennia of diplomatic experience. "We are here to discuss a development that may have significant implications for galactic security." The chamber's central display activated, showing detailed intelligence reports that had been compiled over the past several hours. At the center of it all was a simple personnel file. General Marcus Chen, complete with his daughter's enrollment records at Nexus Academy. "For those who have not been briefed," the High Counselor continued, "we have confirmed that the human child currently attending our most prestigious educational institution is the daughter of the individual our intelligence services have designated as an Omega-level strategic threat." A ripple of concern passed through the assembled delegates. Omega-level classifications were rare. In the past 1,000 years, fewer than a dozen individuals had warranted such designation. Furthermore, Vorthak continued, analysis of the child's performance at Nexus Academy suggests that she has been trained in advanced tactical concepts that exceed even our most conservative estimates of human military capabilities. Representative Clethen from the hegemony worlds leaned forward, his multiple eyes focusing intently on the display. "High Counselor, are we to understand that humanity has been conducting what amounts to intelligence operations using a child as an operative?" "The situation is more complex than simple espionage," replied Intelligence Coordinator Mexthile. "Our analysis suggests that Miss Chen's presence at the Academy serves multiple purposes. Intelligence gathering, certainly, but also demonstration of capabilities, establishment of diplomatic relationships, and most concerning of all, positioning for future influence." The coordinator brought up additional data, showing analysis of Zara's tactical demonstrations and their implications. The techniques she has displayed suggest military doctrines that could be adapted to galactic-scale conflicts with devastating effectiveness. If General Chen has been preparing his daughter for a role in humanity's galactic integration, we may be looking at the groundwork for a significant shift in the balance of power. At Nexus Academy, the revelation of Zara's parentage had spread through the student body like wildfire. The corridors buzzed with hushed conversations, as alien students struggled to process the implications of what they had learned. Vextar found himself in the unusual position of defending the very human he had previously mocked. When a group of younger students began discussing whether Zara was some kind of spy, his scales flared with aggressive warning colors. "You have no idea what you're talking about," he hissed at them. "She defeated me in fair combat using techniques I'd never seen before. Do you think someone capable of that level of strategic thinking needs to resort to simple spying?" Krelok, her crystalline form chiming softly with nervous energy, had reached a different conclusion. "I don't think she's here to spy on us," she told anyone who would listen. "I think she's here to show us what humans are capable of. It's a demonstration of power disguised as education." But it was Blorith who understood the true scope of what was happening. His family's connections in the council bureaucracy had given him access to information that painted a much larger picture. "You're all thinking too small," he told his friends during an emergency gathering in one of the Academy's private conference rooms. "This isn't about one human child or even one human general. This is about humanity's entire approach to galactic integration." He activated a holographic display showing diplomatic correspondence between Earth and the Galactic Council dating back to first contact. "Look at the pattern of negotiations. Every agreement, every treaty, every exchange of information has been structured to gradually increase human involvement in galactic affairs while limiting the galaxy's understanding of human capabilities." Vexitar studied the data, his reptilian intelligence processing the implications. "They've been playing a long game, building relationships, establishing credibility, gaining access to our technology and institutions, while keeping their true capabilities hidden," Krelok added, her crystals dimming with realization. "The question is, what are they preparing for?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Professor Yildara had been conducting her own investigation into human strategic doctrine, using her access to classified military databases to analyze the broader implications of what she had observed in her classroom. "I've been studying General Chen's theoretical writings," she announced to an emergency faculty meeting. "They're available through diplomatic channels as part of the cultural exchange protocols. What I found is disturbing." She activated the chamber's main display, showing excerpts from strategic papers that General Chen had authored over the past decade. He's not just a military commander. He's a strategic philosopher who has been developing frameworks for civilizational conflict on scales we've never considered. The assembled faculty studied the documents with growing alarm. General Chen's writings dealt with concepts like asymmetric civilization warfare, resource denial, strategies for interstellar conflicts, and tactical applications of cultural psychology in multi-species environments. "These aren't just military papers," observed Professor Klimtal from the Xenobiology Department. "They're blueprints for how a technologically inferior civilization could successfully challenge established galactic powers." Director Threxnall reviewed the analysis with increasing concern. "Are we looking at evidence that humanity is preparing for conflict with the galactic community?" "Not conflict," Professor Yildara corrected. "Replacement. General Chen's writings suggest that he views the current galactic order as fundamentally unstable and inefficient. He's not planning to fight the existing powers. He's planning to make them irrelevant." The implications were staggering. If humanity's chief strategist believed that the galactic community could be supplanted through superior tactics and organization, then Zara's presence at Nexus Academy took on an entirely different meaning. "She's not here to learn from us," Director Threxnell realized. "She's here to study us, to understand our strengths, weaknesses, and decision-making processes so that her father can develop countermeasures." Meanwhile, in her quarters, Zara was finally having the conversation with her parents that she had been avoiding for months. The secure communication channel crackled with the delay between star systems, but her father's voice was clear and steady. "I know you have questions, Zara," General Chen said without preamble, "and I know the situation at the Academy has become complicated, but I need you to understand that everything we've done has been necessary for humanity's survival." "Dad," Zara said quietly, "they're calling you a threat to galactic civilization. They're treating me like I'm some kind of weapon you've sent to infiltrate them." "In a sense, they're not wrong," her father replied, his honesty cutting through the diplomatic doublespeak she had grown accustomed to at the Academy. "The galactic community is not as benevolent as they pretend to be, Zara. They integrate new species on their terms, according to their rules, in ways that serve their interests. We're taking a different approach." "What kind of approach?" "We're showing them that humanity brings capabilities they need, while making it clear that we won't be absorbed into their system as junior partners." Your presence at Nexus Academy was designed to demonstrate both our value and our independence. Zara felt a chill run down her spine. And what happens now that they know who I am? Now, General Chen said grimly, we find out whether the galactic community is wise enough to treat humanity as an equal partner, or whether they're going to force us to demonstrate why that would be in their best interests. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent chime from Zara's door. When she opened it, she found Director Threxnell accompanied by a security detail that included representatives from multiple species. Miss Chen, the director said formally, by order of the Galactic Council emergency session, you are hereby requested to participate in an urgent diplomatic proceeding. Your father's presence is also required via secure communication. As Zara was escorted through the Academy's corridors, she could see alien students and faculty watching from doorways and observation decks. Word had spread throughout the institution that General Marcus Chen's daughter was about to face questions that could determine the future relationship between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. The demonstration of human capabilities that had begun with a simple sparring match was about to reach its climax, and the galaxy was about to learn whether they had been nurturing a valuable ally or a potential threat that could reshape the balance of power across the stars. Hastily reconfigured to accommodate a formal proceeding involving multiple galactic powers, holographic projectors displayed the seals of dozens of species, while secure communication channels connected the Academy to the highest levels of galactic government. Zara sat at the center of it all, a 12-year-old human girl facing questions that could determine the future of interstellar relations. To her left, a massive holographic display showed her father's image, General Marcus Chen appearing for the first time before an assembly of galactic representatives. General Chen, High Counselor Vorthak began, her ancient voice carrying both authority and wariness. You stand accused of conducting strategic deception against the galactic community. How do you respond to these charges? General Chen's expression remained calm and professional, but Zara could see the steel in his eyes that had made him legendary among Earth's military forces. High Counselor, I reject the premise of your accusation. Humanity has fulfilled every agreement we've made with the Galactic Council. We have been honest about our capabilities when asked directly, and we have conducted ourselves according to established diplomatic protocols. Yet, you sent your daughter to our most prestigious academy with advanced military, training and strategic capabilities that far exceed what we were led to believe about human development, interjected Representative Clethan. From the hegemony worlds, I sent my daughter to receive an education, General Chen replied evenly. The fact that she has exceeded your expectations says more about the limitations of your intelligence gathering than it does about any deception on our part. Intelligence Coordinator Mex Thiel activated a display showing analysis of Zara's tactical demonstrations. Miss Chen has displayed strategic thinking that our analysts describe as revolutionary. These are not the capabilities of a child receiving standard human education. No, General Chen agreed. They are the capabilities of a human child who has been properly prepared for the challenges of a complex galaxy. Something that should give you confidence in humanity's potential contributions to galactic civilization. Zara watched the proceedings with growing understanding of what her father was doing. He wasn't denying humanity's capabilities. He was reframing them as assets rather than threats. General, High Counselor Vorthak continued, our analysis of your theoretical writings suggests that you view the current galactic order as fundamentally flawed. Some interpret this as evidence of hostile intentions toward established governments. For the first time, General Chen smiled, and Zara recognized the expression that had terrified Earth's enemies for decades. High Counselor, I view inefficiency and complacency as flaws wherever I encounter them. That's not hostility, that's professionalism. He leaned forward slightly, his presence somehow commanding attention despite being nothing more than a hologram. Let me ask you a question in return. When was the last time any of your member species faced an existential threat that required them to innovate, adapt, or fundamentally change their approach to survival? The chamber fell silent. The question struck at the heart of galactic civilization's greatest weakness, the stability that had bred stagnation. Humans have faced such threats repeatedly throughout our history, General Chen continued. We've learned to treat every challenge as potentially existential, Because for us it often was. That perspective has given us capabilities that complement, rather than threaten, the established order. Director Threxnall spoke for the first time during the proceeding. With respect, General, your daughter's performance suggests capabilities that could destabilize existing power structures if fully developed. Director, General Chen replied, my daughter's performance suggests that humanity brings exactly the kind of strategic thinking that could strengthen those power structures against real threats. He activated his own display, showing intelligence reports that made several delegates shift uncomfortably. Your databases contain extensive analysis of potential threats to galactic stability. Rogue AI systems, expansionist hive minds, resource predators from outside known space. When you encounter those threats, how will traditional galactic military doctrine serve you? The implications were clear. The galaxy's long peace had left it unprepared for unconventional threats that wouldn't respect established rules of engagement. Humanity offers something unique, General Chen continued. We bring strategic flexibility, tactical innovation, and most importantly, experience in fighting impossible odds. Not as conquerors, but as allies who can help prepare for challenges that none of our species have faced before. Professor Yildara stood to address the assembly. If I may, High Counselor, I believe General Chen's assessment is correct. Miss Chen's tactical innovations in my classes weren't just impressive. They were solutions to problems that our traditional approaches couldn't solve. She activated her own display, showing the results of Zara's strategic planning exercise. When faced with overwhelming odds, most of our students attempt to minimize losses. Miss Chen found a way to achieve victory. That's not a threat to galactic stability. It's exactly what we need to maintain it. Vextar surprised everyone by requesting permission to speak. The young reptilian scales displayed patterns of respect as he addressed the assembly. High Counselor, I was the first to underestimate Zara Chen, and I paid for that mistake in combat training. But I've learned something important. Humans don't think like the rest of us. They see possibilities where we see limitations. They find advantages where we accept disadvantages. He paused, gathering his courage before continuing. If the galaxy is going to face new challenges, we need beings who think differently. Humans don't just offer different solutions, they offer different ways of finding solutions. The observation sparked a new discussion among the delegates. Several representatives began questioning whether humanity's unconventional approach to problems might actually be an asset in an increasingly complex galaxy. High Counselor Vorthak called for order and addressed General Chen directly. Assuming we accept your assessment of humanity's potential contributions, what exactly are you proposing? I'm proposing a true partnership, General Chen replied. Not integration under existing terms, but cooperation between equals. Humanity brings strategic innovation and tactical flexibility. The galactic community brings technology, resources, and established institutions. Together we can build something stronger than either could achieve alone. And if we refuse? Representative Claython asked pointedly. General Chen's expression didn't change, but his tone became noticeably cooler. Then humanity will continue to develop independently, using our own methods and pursuing our own interests. We've survived as an isolated species for thousands of years. We can continue to do so if necessary. The implied threat was subtle but unmistakable. Humanity could contribute to galactic civilization or compete with it, but they would not be absorbed by it. Zara realized this was the moment her entire academy experience had been building toward. Not just her education, but her demonstration of human capabilities had been preparing the galaxy for this choice. I believe, she said quietly, speaking for the first time during the proceeding, that we all want the same thing. We want to survive and prosper in a galaxy that presents challenges none of us fully understand. The question isn't whether humans are different from other species, we obviously are. The question is whether that difference makes us valuable allies or dangerous competitors. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates, faculty, and fellow students. I've spent months here learning about your cultures, your technologies, and your ways of thinking. They're impressive, and I've gained enormous respect for what you've achieved. But I've also seen limitations in how you approach problems. And what have you concluded? High Counselor Vorthak asked. That we need each other, Zara replied simply. You need someone who can think outside your established frameworks when those frameworks aren't sufficient. We need access to technologies and resources that would take us centuries to develop independently. This doesn't have to be about dominance or submission. It can be about mutual benefit. The chamber fell silent as delegates considered her words. Finally, High Counselor Vorthak spoke. The council will need time to deliberate on these matters. However, I believe this discussion has been illuminating. General Chen, your daughter has proven to be an exceptional representative of human capabilities. She has proven to be exactly what humanity hopes to contribute to galactic civilization, General Chen corrected. Strategic thinking, tactical innovation, and the determination to find solutions when conventional approaches fail. 3 months later, the Galactic Council announced a new classification for humanity, Strategic Partner. It was a designation that had never been used before, recognizing a species as both junior members of galactic civilization and specialized contributors whose expertise was essential for addressing complex challenges. Zara remained at Nexus Academy, but her status had changed completely. Instead of being an isolated curiosity, she became the center of intense academic interest as students and faculty sought to understand human approaches to problem-solving. Her tactical innovations were studied and adapted, her strategic S analyzed and incorporated into military. Aided into military doctrine, the mockery had stopped entirely, replaced by something that Zara found far more satisfying: genuine respect. Her classmates no longer saw her as weak or primitive. They saw her as representing capabilities they wanted to understand and learn from. But perhaps the most significant change was in how the galaxy viewed humanity itself. No longer dismissed as a minor species struggling to reach basic technological competence, humans were recognized as bringing unique and valuable perspectives to galactic civilization. And at the center of it all was the recognition that sometimes, the child who seems weakest actually carries the strength of their entire species, and the wisdom of a father who understood that true power comes not from dominance, but from proving your worth when it matters most. General Marcus Chen had sent his daughter to show the galaxy what humanity could offer. By the time they learned his name, it was too late to underestimate what that meant. The human child they had mocked had changed everything, just as her father had planned.